Welcome to another episode of the For the Love of Cricket podcast with Jim and Akim. Today we'll be discussing the sensational game played earlier between Afghanistan and Australia. Um, Afghanistan batted first, got 291 for 5, and we all thought with a score like that, Australia would be in serious trouble. We were all right. Australia were 91 for 7 and recovered to win the game. Glenn Maxwell scoring a breathtaking 201 not out, supported by his captain Pat Cummins with 13 off about 70 balls. It was a pretty show-stopping game. What was your thought on today's game?
It proved to be probably the most entertaining game of the tournament. Australia looked down and out of the game, and it really took some Glenn Maxwell heroics to bring them over the line, ably supported by the captain Pat Cummins, who I think played an equally important knock by occupying the crease and holding an end while Maxwell was at his destructive best. Afghanistan will feel hard done by the result. I think they batted very well. They posted a score of 291 for 5 inside their 50 overs. They scored 75 runs in the last 5 overs of the game, last 5 to 6 overs of the game. And Ibrahim Zadran carried his bat. He opened the batting and batted right through to the 50th over and made a very well played 129. Rashid Khan played a very good cameo towards the end, 35 off 18, and Afghanistan would have felt like they were well and truly in with a chance to win this game up until the completion of probably 70 overs, but Glenn Maxwell had other ideas.
We can start with Zadran's 129. Was a pretty composed innings, you would say. He started pretty sedately, found the gaps of the seamers, and then just kept picking up his scoring rate throughout the innings. So far in this tournament, his lowest score was 14, and his second lowest score was 22. So he got starts in all the games. He had 2 half centuries, he had a big half century of 89 against Pakistan, and it was just about timing for him in terms of when he would get that big 100, and he did so today against the mighty Australians. You want to go through their batting effort?
I think they started off fairly well. They lost Gerbers with the score at 38 inside in the 8th over. Zadran, I think, played a very good innings. His innings was calculated. It was almost old school 50 over cricket. We've seen the likes of Quinton de Kock, Travis Head, David Warner, Rohit Sharma be very aggressive inside the power play in this tournament and very aggressive at the top of the order. Zadran gave us a throwback to 50 over cricket probably in the early 2000s and late 90s, where the openers or somebody in the top 4 would look to bat very deep into the innings. He took it to the extreme because he batted all 50 overs, and it gave Afghanistan a very good platform. At one point I thought that they would have gotten to a total that would have been well under par. They were at about 220 with 6 overs or so to go, and they had a number of wickets in hand. Zadran had laid a platform, but the other batters that came struggled to get the ball away. It was a bit of a struggle, and it looked as if Australia would have probably restricted them to about 240, 250, and they would have really fancied themselves there. We saw the cameo that Rashid Khan played towards the end of the innings, and there were a couple shots of the Australian fielders while Rashid was on the go, and they all looked very worried after each boundary that was scored, Mitch Marsh especially. So I think Afghanistan would have been fairly happy with the score that they got, and then in the bowling effort, the way they started inside the first 20 overs, they would be very happy as well.
Australia's bowling, Josh Hazelwood got 2 wickets. He was his usual best. He bowled 9 overs for 39. Maxwell was consistent as usual. Pat Cummins went wicketless, but he bowled well. Adam Zampa picked up a wicket. His 10 went for 58, but the worst of the figures was Mitchell Starc. 9 overs for 70. Give us your take on how you thought he went about his business and then the rest of the bowlers.
I think Mitchell Stark bowled fairly well at the start of the innings. He bowled fairly well. He got the ball to shape around. From early out, you could see that the bounce was not very consistent. It was not the best bounce. When he came back towards the death, though, he was taken apart by Rashid Khan, I think. Rashid Khan is a very unorthodox batter. He scores in awkward places and he can be very difficult to bowl to. Looking at the finish that Afghanistan had in the last 5 or 6 overs, Australia will look at the death bowling there and see it as a cause for concern and an area that they need to tighten up on. They would be disappointed to concede 76 runs in that manner, especially at that time of the game, and those runs could have really shifted the tide of the game towards Afghanistan. It was dangerous and it was concerning for them, and Mitchell Stark, who you would say is the leader of this Australian 50 over attack. Josh Hazlewood is the #1 bowler in the world in ODI cricket, but Mitchell Stark is the leader, and I think he has been the leader of this attack for a number of years now. He would be a bit disappointed in his execution in the death.
Do you think the Australians' death overs were really that bad, given previous games with all the other teams, all of the, you call it the top 5 teams, top 5 or 6 teams, they tend to get about 80 or so from their last 10. Afghanistan got about that score. They were on par with what everyone else is doing. Do you think the Australians bowled that badly at the death, or are we underestimating Afghanistan's ability to score in the death?
I think it's a bit of both. Australia would be disappointed in conceding 93 runs in the last 10 overs. I think they would be disappointed in that Afghanistan had a number of wickets in hand, but I think they would still fancy themselves to restrict Afghanistan to probably 70, 75. I think they probably got 20 runs too many.
Remember, we're talking about an international team here going into the last 10 with 6 wickets in hand.
But still, I still think with the caliber of the bowlers that they have, they would have backed themselves to restrict them.
Australian response 293 for 7, winning the game with 3 wickets to spare. I should really say Glenn Maxwell in response made 201 out of Australia's 293. Glenn Maxwell won the game. Australia had no place winning this game from 91 for 7. Outside of Glenn Maxwell, the highest score was Mitch Marsh at 24 from 11. You want to go through the Australian innings, or you want to speak about Glenn Maxwell and then Afghanistan bowling effort?
I'll go through the Australian innings for a little bit. I think the Afghanistan bowled very well. They got the ball to move around and shape around. They were accurate and they asked questions of the Australian batters. Generally, we associate the strength of Afghanistan's bowling with their spin bowlers. They played 4 spinners today and 2 medium seamers, really 2 medium pacers. But it was the seamers who did the damage and struck early up. Naveen Ulhaq and Omar Zai, they were both very good inside the power play. And in the first set of overs after the power play, they moved the ball around and they asked real questions of Australia, and that got them in a bit of a pickle. I think Rashid Khan also bowled a very good spell today. He started well, he was attacking. When he came on, the very first ball he bowled, run out took place. Labuschagne was run out in his partnership with Glenn Maxwell, but Afghanistan were well and truly on top at that point. I was watching the game live and I thought that Glenn Maxwell would have a chance to probably get 70 or 80. I think that if he played his cards right, he would have gotten 70 or 80 because he has the ability to push bowlers back and he has the ability to take charge of an innings. I thought that he just really needed to be calculated in his approach. But I still felt as if Afghanistan would have gotten him out somehow and they would have gone on to win the game comfortably by 60 or 70 runs.
Um, they created two chances, so he was dropped on what, 24,
And then on 33.
so it's not that it was without effort. It's just they weren't backed up in the field this
Yeah.
time. They have been a pretty good fielding unit thus far, but those two chances today were pretty costly.
I disagree with you with them being a pretty good fielding effort. They brought up a stat, and I think out of the 10 teams in the World Cup, they are the 7th or 8th worst in terms of the completion of catches. They have one of the lowest percentage of catches taken in the tournament.
They're about what, 50?
No.
50?
I think it was probably 60 something percent.
Afghanistan's bowling, they played four spinners. They had no option but to feed Glenn Maxwell with spin. What would you have done differently bowling to Glenn Maxwell today?
When I think about how I would have bowled, I have to look at how the only off spinner on the day bowled, Mohamed Nabi. He bowled 2 overs for 20. Generally, Mohamed Nabi is a bowler that uses his variations in pace very well. He is a push and pull sort of bowler because he doesn't generate a lot of spin. I think that he started a bit short and wide to Maxwell. He conceded probably 4 boundaries through the offside of wide deliveries that were slapped through deep extra cover. He was basically trying to bowl cuts, but I think enough pace wasn't on the ball. Thinking about how I would have gone about it, I think I'm a different sort of spinner to Mohamed Nabi, and I would have probably tried to go to my strength and spin a couple deliveries early out. But that being said, that is in Glenn Maxwell's strength and in his arc, so it was a difficult task to really execute. Nabi, I think Nabi probably took a while to bowl around the wicket as well. I thought he would have started around the wicket. He started over the wicket, but the line and the approach was too short and wide, and it was too slow if he was going to bowl that line. He had the deep points, but Maxwell was hitting the balls well in front of point through deep cover. So that tells you that he had a lot of time to play the shot. So enough pace was not on the deliveries from Nabi. Outside of that, I think the left arm wrist spinner, Noor Ahmad, I think he bowled with too much flight to Maxwell. He gave the ball way too much air and he was hit over his head probably 3 or 4 times for 6, and the balls were almost in the same place. We've seen him operate in the tournament where he has gone left arm around the wicket and bowled a number of googlies to the right-handers, which is his best ball, but he didn't execute that a lot today, and I was wondering about it, and I don't know if it was just the pressure of the situation or the instructions of the captain, but I was surprised in how he went about his business. I think Rashid Khan was good. He got hit for a couple boundaries from Maxwell as well, but that was a given the mood that Maxwell was in and how set he was at the time. Mujib struggled. I think Mujib struggled the most out of all of the spinners, and when he came back in the death, he went to pieces. He bowled an over in which Maxwell got to the double century. I think he went for like 3 or 4 sixes in the over. It was flat, it was short, at times it was right up in the zone. There was not much thought on variation, I feel, and he didn't look like the feared mystery spinner that we know him to be.
That was the final over of the game. The first ball was a good delivery, wide outside off, and Maxwell tugged it over mid wicket. The second 6 was a long up. I think he tried to slow down and bowl a cut, a slow wide ball to cut, but Maxwell was adamant that he would just stand his ground and hit it over mid wicket again for 6. So it's difficult bowling to somebody on 190.
Yeah, it is. I think the only area I saw that Afghanistan could have operated differently, I think the Pacers could have tried to bowl full and wide Yorkers at the wide line to Glenn Maxwell, especially when he was on one foot and he wasn't using his feet that much. That's the only area in which I thought that they could have probably tried to bowl a bit more. A lot of the times they were over the wicket and coming at the stumps, and it was really in the arc for Maxwell to hit. So that was my thoughts in terms of the execution of the Pacers.
Do you think it was a case where Afghanistan's plan was Maxwell is a hitter when he has a good hitter when he has the use of his arms? Let's try and stay close to him for as long as possible. They got 2 chances doing that, and they figured if we're stuck with that, we probably could get a third.
It's difficult to say because they produced 2 chances. I think the drop catch, the first drop catch of Rashid Khan, I think that delivery was a leg spinner. It was outside off and going away. But the drop catch of, I think it was Noor. The ball was on the stump. It was cramping him for room, and it was a regulation catch to Mujib Rahman. I mean, I would have been deflated seeing a catch like that go down and then seeing Maxwell play the innings that he did. At that level, you have to take that catch 10 times out of 10. You take that catch in your sleep. But I think it probably was the plan, but based on how it was going on the day, I think they took too long to go to a plan B.
What if there was no plan B?
You need a plan B. Plan Bs are always very important.
I can understand their line of thought. Rashid Khan leg spinner, the ball was on and around off stump, just outside off stump. So you're taking the arms away. Noor Ahmed bowling over the wicket, keeping it on the stumps to Maxwell as well. They can understand that as well. Here's why I think Noor Ahmed did not go around the wicket. He's a left arm wrist spinner. I don't know if there was some stat that says round the wicket, bowling googless to Maxwell was a no-no, because that is with him, that would have been my first line of attack. Google is his best ball. You have to try, and when Maxwell is about 80, 90, 100, switch aside. Bowl wide to him. The same as you were saying, probably even slow, as his Googles are pretty slow. Let him reach for it, make the pace, and try and drag it to the leg side. He only hit 1 6 over the half side. All the other 10 sixes, he hit 8 sixes over long on and mid wicket. You have to let him hit you for 6 over cover. I think it was just poor thinking, poor plan changing in the heat of the moment on the field. It was as if there was a blackboard session and they said, let's go with the blackboard session to the end. You remember I sent you a message and said, you think they can get the 100? And you said, boy, if they don't bring back the seamers early, right now, they are in trouble, and they didn't. It took too long. Maxwell was about 150 when the seamer came back.
Yeah, it took way too long. The other point I would make with Noor is that he is a left arm wrist spinner, so it's similar to an off spinner in the way that his stop ball goes. I have spent a good bit of my career bowling around the wicket, and I would tell you that the minute you go around the wicket and you bowl and you start the ball off the stumps coming back, it gives the batters an arc, a free swing. It gives them room to swing through the line of the ball, and I think that is what happened with a number of the sixes that Maxwell hit down the ground over Noor's head. I feel if he started with a line that was a bit tighter, probably middle stump, mid and off, spinning back, he would have created a bit more problems. It would have forced Maxwell to hit the ball in another direction. He would have probably had to have gone to mid wicket and square leg instead of
Side screen.
the side screen. It would have made things a bit more difficult. That probably would have required no change in the field, because I don't think he was bowling with a backward square leg at one point. I think he was bowling with deep cover. But in 50 over cricket with 4 fielders outside the circle, you have to take the risk. Even if he didn't have the deep cover and he had square leg back, force Maxwell to hit that side. The chances that he produced, the chance that he produced went with Maxwell going behind square. So I think the line to which he tried to bowl was a bit too wide. He needed to be straighter on the stumps.
That's a very, 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 very tough skill to execute consistently though, as a wrist spinner.
It is.
And as a left arm wrist spinner, especially, they generally are not that accurate. And you would have to ask Brad Hogg to do that. There's no wrist spinner I see right now in world cricket that are left-handed that can consistently land that ball and middle stump, mid and off. Afghanistan has played pretty good throughout this World Cup. They have solidified their place in the Champions League. I don't think they have a chance to go into the semi-finals again. Australia currently sit at 4th.
Australia are in 3rd.
Yeah. With a game to go, they should avoid playing India first up in that semi-final.
It's confirmed, man. It's South Africa versus
India.
No, South Africa versus Australia for sure.
Yeah.
And then India versus New Zealand or Pakistan, or I think Afghanistan still has a very slim mathematical chance.
It's tough. They would have to
Hope that
Pakistan would have to lose for them to go through.
Yeah.
You think Australia got out of jail today
I did.
in terms of getting an easier road to the final?
You think it's an easier road to the final?
I think they're going to beat South Africa.
I think they would fancy playing South Africa. They would much prefer playing against South Africa than India. They got out of jail with the result and how it seeded them in the tournament.
We have seen Afghanistan do pretty well in this tournament. Do you still consider them minnows?
I don't. I do not consider them minnows. I stopped calling them minnows when they came to the Caribbean a couple years ago and trounced the West Indies. I watched them play, and a number of players have now moved on, but they have kept some of the core. The likes of Nabi and Rashid Khan. I think Mujib was fairly young at that point, or he was just coming out to the Under-19 World Cup and going into the, he was going into their setup. But I think they had a very good crop of cricketers, and I was impressed with them, and they've only gone from strength to strength. You look at the batting, and a number of the batters like Zadran are young. They're in their early 20s, and they have a very good core. They have a very good unit.
In my eyes, Afghanistan can be a very, very good team. They can even rise to that status of greatness. They're just probably lacking one sure middle order batter, and if Rashid Khan and Mujib can be more consistent against those top-notch teams, because they're two superstars. If they can be consistent with top-level performances, then I don't see any team taking on Afghanistan and thinking that we should win this game easily or walk over them in any limited over series anytime soon. As you mentioned, most of the players are pretty young. Their top 3 batters are below the age of 25. The 2 openers are 21. Mujib is around 22. Rashid Khan is 23 again. So it is looking very good for them. Naveen, the fast bowler, is 24 too.
Yeah,
So if this group of players can stay together for another 2-3 years, going into the next World Cup cycle, it should be pretty difficult for teams to just beat them. You have anything else to add?
One more thing. I think a lot of emphasis and attention has been placed on the knock that Glenn Maxwell played, and rightly so, but Pat Cummins deserves a lot of credit for the knock that he played. He played a captain's knock, he was aware of the situation, he knew what it would have required for Australia to get across the line. He was very disciplined in his approach. At no point did you feel like he was going to panic and probably take a rash swing for the hills to get things home. It seemed as if the communication was very clear with Glenn Maxwell. Maxwell seemed determined to bat right through the innings despite the cramps and everything else. And it made Pat Cummins' role very simple. Well, not very simple, but very clear in what he had to do. And credit must go to him, because a lot of batters would have lost their discipline, and a bit of ego would have probably come into the situation, and they would have given the game away for their team. So credit must go to him for the knock that he played. He had a strike rate of probably less than 20, but it was a match winning partnership and a match winning knock from him.
I guess you have to give credit to the physio as well. He was out there so many times. He was out there almost every 5 overs.
Yeah,
Apparently, he gave Glenn Maxwell nothing but words and tell him they can't come off the field, because based on his experience in games where players come off the field and you go in the dressing room inside that air conditioning, and you basically get cold.
You lose the adrenaline too.
The adrenaline is gone, and there's no way the cramping is going to stop or get less. It just gets worse. So he was out there constantly giving him some massages and words of encouragement, and making him know that you can't come off the field if we are to win this game. Adam Zampa probably did about 5 miles up and down those stairs, because every time the physio come out, he had to come down because he was the next man in, because he would have had to replace a player that was retiring injured. So it was quite a farcical game. So it was interesting. If you missed it, I think you should watch the highlights.
I think you should try to rewatch the full game, because the full game will give you the full story. I don't think the highlights will do justice, believe me.
You have anything else to add?
No, that's all from me.
Thanks for watching, guys.
Thanks for watching.